Greetings, salutations, and welcome to After Action. I'm your host, Patrick Kreeger, and today I'm joined by Jack.
Hello.
We decided to go a little bit different this week and go post-apocalyptic.
Kind of. It is a post-apocalyptic movie, but it's more of an action movie, an action-adventure movie. It kind of doesn't know what it is. It's a lot of different things, and it doesn't work too well. And it's not a well-received movie when it came out. I don't know if you would call it a cult movie, because it never really attained any kind of cult status as far as I know, but
it's no Rocky Horror Picture Show, but people do know about it. And that is, of course, WaterWorld. The perfect high-def movie experience.
Yeah. No, I'm surprised that we even have this on Blu-ray. I didn't even know there was a Blu-ray release just because that's just such a funny thing to put on Blu-ray just because it's, a notorious movie. I mean, they put I think recently they put like Ishtar on Blu-ray, didn't they? They put some of those like infamously bad movies on Blu-ray, which is just kind of strange. But
well, I had been told that this was a bad movie, but it looked like it was a good movie from what I saw.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'll get it right out of the way. I don't hate this movie. I actually like this movie, and I don't think it deserves the bad reputation it gets. I just say that it has a bad reputation. Like you when you hear WaterWorld, it's usually in the context of a flop film, or of something that bombed at the box office, or just kind of a big dumb action movie that failed financially and critically. For some backstory, this movie came out in 1995, and at the time, it was the most expensive movie ever produced. I think the budget was $235 million.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. It started out at like $135 million, and then went up from there.
Yeah, I don't know the full backstory, but it's actually kind of an interesting history if you look into it. I'm sure there's lots of videos and articles on it, but
we'll talk about a little bit of it in a moment. But I do want to get to the back of the box and our reviews. So, the back of the box. Scene. Okay. See one of the screens.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, Jack. See one of the screen's biggest action-adventure epics as never before on Blu-ray high def. Set in the future of Earth when Earth is completely covered in water and the human race is struggling to survive. Mankind's one remaining hope for a better future is a drifter, Kevin Costner, who gets caught up in the battle between the evil deacon, Dennis Hopper, and a child's secret key to a wondrous place called Dry Land. Featuring groundbreaking special effects, WaterWorld is visually stunning, futuristic thriller beyond your wildest imagination.
Yeah. This movie, it's like a post-apocalyptic movie. I guess if you had to summarize it in one sense, it's like it's Road Warrior on the water, basically.
True.
And it's post-apocalyptic. The world is effectively destroyed because of global warming, covers everything in water. And so the human survivors just drift on the ocean in ramshackle boats, and everyone doesn't really have any memory of humans actually living on land just because it's been so long. And the villains are some specific gang led by kind of like it is a lot like Mad Max, and in that the villains are just a particular gang that wants something from the protagonists.
So would you say this is a watch or don't watch?
Well, I would say it really depends. If you like post-apocalyptic stuff, or I would say if you like good art direction or interesting designs, this movie has a really cool setting, like a really cool world building stuff. I guess if you just like kind of 80s and 90s adventure, kind of general adventure action movies, I guess I'd give it a watch, but I wouldn't really recommend this to everyone. It's pretty corny, I think is the big problem. It's corny, and I feel like it doesn't go far enough in a lot of areas.
By the way, dear audience, I would say that it's watch on my part as well. I was just taken aback by a little factoid I found out that you'll be hearing about in a moment. So, do we want to get into the history of this film, or do we want to get into its plot first?
Well, I mean, we kind of already went over the... Well, I guess, yeah, in greater detail we can get into the plot. So, yeah, I referenced Mad Max and the Road Warrior. The main character is sort of similar to Max. He's just kind of this drifter, loner guy. Instead of the V8 Interceptor, he has this, what do you call it? Like
trimaran.
A trimaran, yeah, like a trimaran boat. He's just a loner. He's by himself. He's surviving on the ocean. He, occasionally interacts with people to buy stuff and trade stuff. But, for the most part, he just wants to keep to himself. But he's kind of thrust into the situation where the city that I guess you would call it a city. It's essentially just a big floating city on the ocean, which has kind of a funny real world history to it that I'll get into a little while later. But he's staying there, and while he's there, he gets attacked, or the whole city gets attacked by the villains who are called the Smokers, because they have guns and actual motor engines and technology like that, whereas everyone else has to use sails and more primitive technology. So the villains in this movie have a monopoly on diesel and engines and stuff like that. And so the plot essentially is a woman and... Is she her daughter?
No.
Okay, a woman and a young girl gets, in this crazy situation, escape on his boat. And they're the only survivor, or some of the only survivors of this attack.
They think they're the only survivors.
Yeah, for the most part, they're the only survivors. But the little girl has a tattoo on her back that supposedly points to dry land. And since this is WaterWorld, there's supposedly no dry land. But according to legend, there is one island somewhere that's dry land. And so the Smokers want to get the girl because she can, point them to. They believe that they can find dry land with her, and so essentially the whole plot is the Smokers trying to capture the girl, and the main character, who I guess he doesn't have a name. He's just called the Mariner.
Is he just called the Mariner?
Yeah, they credit him as the Mariner. So the Mariner, played by Kevin Costner, they try to evade capture by Dennis Hopper and the Smokers.
The little girl did make the point that he doesn't have a name.
Yeah, at the end of the movie. I guess that kind of fits in the theme of the movie. But I don't know. Do we go into spoiler territory?
Oh, that was the whole point of the watch don't watch.
Yeah,
we're in spoiler territory.
Yeah. So. They eventually, the Deacon, well, I guess I should point out, Dennis Hopper's character, he's the villain, I guess he's called the Deacon. It's funny, there's a lot of names in this movie, but you never really hear them. A lot of characters you kind of just...
Oh no, Deacon mentions his name a number of times.
He mentions his name a few times, but I don't think it's until like the final act of the movie that he calls himself that.
I think you're kind of right.
Yeah. Anyway, they eventually capture the girl, and then Kevin Costner has to go save her, and this is the final act of the movie. And I guess a big part of the movie is at first Kevin Costner wants to just kill the girl and the older woman just to
get rid of him.
Yeah, just to get rid of him because he's a loner. But eventually he learns to trust them, and he wants to protect them. And there isn't really a lot of chemistry, though. I think is one of the failings in the movie. I never really got the feeling that these people actually cared about each other that much.
Yeah, when the girl was like, he's going to come for me. And I'm like, little lady there. He's thrown you to the sharks a couple times in this film. I don't think he really cares about you too much.
I mean, he goes from literally throwing them overboard to try and get rid of them to, going on a one-man commando mission to rescue them from the Deacon ship at the very end of the movie. But it doesn't feel like a very natural progression. It feels very forced. And I think that's one of the big failings of this movie is it has the world building, it has like the cool ideas, the concept is really cool. I don't think there's any other movie that's really done anything like this.
No, and I hate to say it, but if he just like flat out fell in love with the woman at the beginning of the film, like just fell in love with her, it would have made a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Rather than having this tension between the two, which was really unnecessary, at least it appeared.
Yeah. It's just the human element in this movie just doesn't work. Yeah, I don't care about these characters, and I don't think anyone really does.
No, but there, like you were saying, there is a ton of awesome world building. Some of which that I want to talk about. If you haven't seen the film, there is a large point when they're taking place on the Deacon's ship, which is the Exxon Valdez.
Yeah, it's a cool little detail.
I thought that was kind of cool. Well, so what I guffawed at earlier was I was kind of shocked. I'm like, okay, so if that's the Exxon Valdez, is this Saint Joe that they pray to?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing in the movie. That one of the little world building things is at one point you see the deacon. He's talking to his minions, and then he's in the bridge of the ship, and he's right next to this portrait of someone named, I think, Joe Hazelwood, Captain Joe Hazelwood, and then he keeps pointing to him and referring to him as Saint Joe. So I guess the smokers in this movie have some kind of cult around
the former captain of the ship, who turns out to be the actual captain who was in command of the Exxon Valdez during the oil spill. It gets deeper than that. Okay? Joseph Hazelwood was apparently drunk on Jack Daniels when he wrecked the Exxon Valdez.
Yeah.
Which is why the deacon drinks Jack Daniels.
Yeah, because they keep showing, like, it isn't really put, like, right front and center, but something I kept noticing throughout the movie is they kept having these crates of booze on the bridge of the ship, and for some reason they were always... A lot of the upper crust of the smoker society were always holding Jack Daniels bottles. Like I just assumed they, it's just funny because they're drunk. Yeah, or product placement. But I guess that's funny. There's a little bit of backstory to that.
I just found that kind of cool.
That's a strong point of the movie. If you have to point to a strong point, it's all the funny little details and world building, things like that.
Like the immortal tomato plants.
Oh yeah. One of the things I think is cool is, okay, so how do people survive on the water if there's no land, if they only have boats? How do they grow crops? Well, for the most part they fish, but you occasionally see potted plants and like trees growing on the ships that they have. Like at the very beginning, when we're introduced to the Mariner, another world building thing is the very first shot of him, he's peeing into a bottle, and then he takes the bottle of urine and then he dumps it into like this weird kind of steampunk machine, and then you see the piss like going through the tubes, and then it comes out like a faucet and it's clean water, and then he uses some of that water to water a little lime tree,
lime or lemon,
totally like a lime tree, yeah. And then the whole opening action scene in the movie is him trying to. There's like another sailor, like there's him on his trimaran, and then there's like another boat next to him, and then while Kevin Costner is, I think he goes diving in the water. While he's doing that, the other boat, the guy sailing it, boards his ship and steals his lime, and then there's a whole action scene trying to get the lime back and trying to get the lime tree back, and then later there's like a tomato plant that he buys, which is kind of silly because if you know anything about actual tomato plants, it's they suck. And tomato plants would be like the last thing you'd want in like a world with not a lot of arable land, because they only last like a couple, like a month or two before they wilt and die, and they're super fragile, and they're super easy to snap. They don't have a lot of longevity like a lime tree would.
It's not that bad of an idea for an area like that had the tomato plant to begin with. But definitely for our Mariner, it did not make any sense. The first storm, that thing's going to be gone.
Yeah.
You would have to
maybe if he puts it under the ship, like underneath the deck.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea. Keep the plant inside in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially in a tomato plant too.
Yeah.
You need lots of sun. But yeah, there's lots of cool little world building things like that.
The feeding of the old lady to the algae.
Yeah. There's a part at the beginning where there's like a dead woman, and there's some people like reading off some kind of weird religious rites, and then putting her body into kind of this muddy, mulchy stuff that's right next to a tree. You know, implying that they reconstitute the dead so that they can.
They flat out said it.
Yeah, so that they could fertilize their plants, their crops with it.
One of the things I thought was kind of funny, and this is my own headcanon on this, is they keep doing this whole thing about cutting people's hair. And my headcanon is that they're using the hair as a soil substitute for the plants.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being the case in the movie, but they never really explicitly show that, so...
But that's like,
I don't know what the deal with the hair cutting is.
They cut off the hair of the corpse before they put her in the algae soup thing.
Yeah.
And that algae soup thing is apparently like very toxic because you see people fall into it and get dissolved. That's like a thing. The bad guys fall into it.
Well, wait, didn't Kevin Costner fall into it?
Yes, that's one thing that was very confusing to me.
I mean, I just assumed it was just mud.
Yeah.
Just fertilizer mud goop.
Kinda. I was wondering if they were eating that too. And so, let's get into, this is related, the linguistics in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Hydro.
Yeah, this movie has some good and some bad stuff. Like, like Mad Max and similar movies, they use a lot of, I guess you could say, like, fake jargon in the movie to kind of build the world, to make the setting feel more like its own kind of alien.
Are you scanning what I'm scanning?
Yeah, like stuff like that. And some of it's good, but some of it's dumb. Like hydro. So obviously you can't drink seawater, so they have to drink fresh water, right? But instead of calling it fresh water or clear water or pure water or something like that, they call it hydro, which is just weird.
And so that's one thing I want to ask you, dear audiences. I had the theory that hydro was some sort of alcohol that they're drinking, and not actually just pure drinking water. Because there is a couple times throughout the movie, where they talk about drinking water. And there's only once do we hear people call it hydro. It's only in that bar scene.
Yeah. Well, I think you hear him say hydro. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be some kind of alcohol, like maybe some kind of super watered down just alcohol fermented from something. I don't know.
Well, later in the film, the little girl says, the only two people that have red faces are the people that spend too much time in the sun and those that drink too much, implying that it's alcohol. And it's slightly green.
Yeah, that is weird.
Not all the drinking water is green, but what they call hydro is clearly green.
This movie keeps you guessing. Yeah, it's just weird because there's so much thought. There's all this thought put into the world, and just the characters are so flat. Like to get back into the characters for a little bit. One of the big problems with this movie is the villains.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the main characters aren't horrible. Like they're just kind of flat and they don't have a whole lot of chemistry. But the villains are just. Dennis Hopper as the Deacon is what I imagine if what would happen if your dad became a Mad Max villain. And I don't mean your dad, Patrick. I just mean anyone's dad. He's kind of just this goofy, kind of corny guy. I mean, he's sort of threatening, like he shoots a few people, but he just has these like funny, like weird, corny one-liners for everything.
And tells dad jokes.
Yeah, he tells dad jokes. Like, I mean, some of them are kind of funny. Like when he, at the beginning, when there's that action scene and there's the machine gun boat that's firing at the city, and the mariner fires a harpoon into it and makes it turn to shoot at Dennis Hopper's, the Deacon's ship. Just before it gets shot up, he takes a drag. The Deacon takes a drag of his cigarette, and and then just says "Adios, cousins," and just dives off the ship as it explodes. There's just lots of goofy lines like that.
Oh gosh! And when he tells the little girl it's never too young to start smoking.
Yeah, that's another thing too. They're all the villains. Yeah, they're called the Smokers, and it's not just because they have like actual motor engines on their boats. It's because they're all smoking all the time. They're always smoking cigarettes, and there's a little bit of lore to it too. Because when you see when they first show the inside of the Deacon's oil barge, he's driving around like almost like like a third world dictator on his car through the inside of the ship. And he's like throwing packs of cigarettes out to the factory workers on the inside who are making bullets and stuff
all
like
sorts
that for
of
him.
things. They build that up in the beginning in the attack scene. They collect all the brass.
Yeah, there's the big machine gun, like the big. There's all the 50 cals attached to the turret, and all the brass shells that are all the casings that are coming out. Someone's sweeping them up and putting them in a bucket. There's just all these neat things like that. It's just that the villains are just so corny, just dad jokes, and they just seem very just dumb. They're not really threatening.
So for a moment here, let's talk about tonality. So we have these really interesting dualities in this film that don't flow well together. We have this, this action film that's trying to be intense and violent and whatnot. We have themes of pedophilia and cannibalism and rape and prostitution,
it's so weird.
And slavery and all this stuff. And when I say prostitution, I mean forced prostitution. And then there's all these jokes and lightheartedness and all this jazz, and like they'll do a nude scene, but they won't show the woman from the front because they're trying to remain PG. They'll show the gory eye of...
Yeah, there's a part where at the beginning where the Deacon, he has his eye, he in the explosion he loses his eye and he has an eye patch, but at one point at a couple points he takes off the eye patch and there's just this gross gory eye socket.
But they won't show blood.
Yeah, people get shot in this movie, but it's almost like cheesy John Wayne, you got me kind of action.
Yeah. It's very strange and it's very mixed-hearted. Like, you don't know what to feel. Like, literally, our hero throws a little girl to the sharks.
Yeah, literally to the sharks.
Our villain literally kills a little girl and we see her dead face on camera for a long time.
Yeah.
But yet, they don't show much blood. And I just find that weird.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, there's the crazy guy that is implied to be like a pedophile. Mm-hmm. Like he tries to buy the woman and the young girl, and he gestures at one point to the young girl and says, how much for her for 30 minutes or something like that. And it's just very strange. And tangentially, my roommate apparently met that guy, like the actor, once, because he used to work at a Starbucks, and that guy came in, and obviously he didn't know who he was, but they were just having a little conversation, at the front, just while they're waiting for the coffee to be done, and he mentioned he was in a few movies, and one of them was in Waterworld, and they looked him up later, and he was the crazy pedophile in the movie. And I don't know, I just wonder how he felt about that, being a crazy pedophile rapist. Like that's
God.
I'm sure he's probably known for more than Waterworld.
One would hope.
I would hope. I don't know. I didn't look him up.
Because if that man is not that way, like if that man is not crazy, he's a good actor. And I would hope he's in other things.
Yeah. Because
I felt very unnerved by him.
It's kind of weird because he I mean, I guess he's a decent actor at being a crazy person, but he doesn't really he's like too handsome to be like a weird pedo rapist. I thought, like, they have all this makeup.
That's what they want you to
look,
think.
Well, they have all this makeup on him, and he looks all messed up, but he doesn't look. He doesn't look too bad, and that's another thing that goes into this movie is I guess it's a minor detail, but all the smokers in the movie, they're all kind of dumb. And for the longest time, and I'm sure most people would agree with this, I just thought it was bad screenwriting, and these are just typical bad, dumb movie villains. But actually looking into some of the I guess not the script, but like some of the design document stuff with this movie. I guess the smokers are all implied to be like inbred.
Yeah, and they kind of mentioned that earlier in the film with that whole scene where they're trying to give the mariner the woman to sleep with. And they're like talking about how we need outsiders to breed with us.
Yeah,
because...
I mean, well, those aren't the smokers, but you can sort of infer that. Yeah, a lot of these insular, oceanic.
Oh no, they mention it explicitly that if you don't like bring in outside blood, that there will be inbreeding, and that's not good. Like other groups, they don't say whichever other groups, but they talk.
And I mean, I guess there is a line later in the Deacon's ship when I think he's talking with his like upper crust smoker people, and he says something like, him or one of his baddies says something like, "It's getting too crowded here." So does that mean that they're all breeding on the ship? And
probably,
I don't know. But the weird thing is, they're all implied to be inbred, but they just come off as dumb, but not necessarily like inbred. It doesn't seem like it's part of the movie. It just seems like bad screenwriting. And I think that's another thing is it would have been cool to have like them all actually look like weird mutants, like inbred fish people. I mean, I guess it would have been more expensive to have all the prosthetics and stuff, but it would have been a lot cooler. It's like that's a big problem with the movie is it has all these cool ideas.
It doesn't go
far enough. Like it would have been cool to have weird mutant smoker and villains. Instead, they kind of just look like normal people, but dirty.
Let's talk about a couple of the mutants. I'll let you explain the Mariner's mutations.
Oh yeah,
in a moment.
yeah.
No, I just wanted to mention, like, you were pointing out the really cool shark, and then there was the weird, like, Leviathan thing.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of, like, genetic anomalies going on here, including with our Mariner.
Yeah, he, so you learn early on he's basically like a fish person. He has some kind of, he has gills and he has webbed toes so he can swim super well.
That totally look real.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in Blu-ray quality.
The worst prosthetics ever. But it factors into the movie, like he can breathe underwater, and he does that a couple times. But it's sort of strange because he's the only mutant in the movie. You never really see anyone else like that, and it just seems like an element in the movie that they could have played up more on.
They imply that they kill all of them on sight, like that's a big thing.
Yeah,
and that not all of them are functional. Like they make a big deal about his gills being functional. He also has the magical ability to sink.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a part where he takes the girl to see the remains,
dry land.
Yeah, the remains of civilization, the city, hundreds of feet underwater, however deep it would be. I assume it wouldn't be that deep because I can't imagine they could survive the pressure. But
okay, so the implication is that the islands we see at the end of the film are Mount Everest, or is Mount Everest.
Oh yeah, so that would be. Oh, yeah, that would be... I mean, I guess there was a submarine... Well, submarines don't even go that far deep. That at least military ones don't go that deep.
Well, but it didn't necessarily have to be there. Like, so we're trying to figure out this backstory of WaterWorld TM. What we don't get is if you had, say, a decade to prepare, there'd be fantastic civilizations floating. You could build so many aircraft carriers in a decade if you really put your mind to it as a world.
We could get the Hampshire guy to build all our underwater hamster cities for us.
Oh gosh, Hampshire. But if you have a chance, please look up underwater hamster objectivism. Right?
Yeah. He's a cool guy.
There's a man out there. There's a man out there who's building an underwater city for hamsters, and Godspeed to him. But if WaterWorld were oncoming, if all the ice caps were going to melt and we were somehow going to be inundated with water, we would be able to build our way around it, realistically speaking. And so the question is, what happened in WaterWorld to cause it to be post-apocalyptic? Was there like a war or something?
Well, I think it's supposed to be global warming because that's one of the things with this movie is I think this was one of the first movies to kind of ride on the Well, I don't want to get into the politics of this, but
we don't do politics on the show.
Yeah, well, when global warming and climate change and that kind of stuff
first started being brought up.
Yeah, I think this movie just took that concept, and I think Kevin Costner is like an environmentalist kind of guy, so I think it was his idea. And this movie isn't really political. Like it doesn't really preach you with the idea or anything.
There's the joke about the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and that's a fine joke to make regardless of what side of the aisle or whatever you're on.
Yeah, and there is a line like earlier in the movie where the scientist guy is saying something like, our ancestors long ago, they did something horrible to make all this happen, to make the ocean like this. But it doesn't really get too far into it.
The logo. Talk about the logo.
Oh yeah. There is kind of a cool thing. So this is a Universal film, and at the beginning it shows the Universal logo with the words Universal going around the Earth. But then instead of just fading into the movie, it zooms into the Earth and it starts showing the polar ice caps kind of melt, and then all the continents slowly be submerged in water until everything's just covered in water. It's kind of a cool use of the logo. Like, you don't see a lot of movies do that, other than I guess like Indiana Jones kind of does that. Like the Paramount Mountain always fades into an actual mountain in the movie.
Oh, I actually didn't.
In all the Indiana Jones, except for the
I was going to say I've only seen it go into a molehill.
Oh, in the crappy Crystal Skull movie. In Raiders and Temple of Doom and all those movies, it fades into an actual mountain.
Dear listener, I have a confession to make. I've only seen one of the Indiana Jones films, and it was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I've never seen Crusaders or Crusaders. Last
Crusade. Yeah.
Stardust Crusaders. Yeah, I know I've seen Temple of Doom and Raiders, but that's you should watch those.
Well, I mean, it's going to
actually something that this movie kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones is the theme music. It has kind of this action adventure, like classical orchestrated upbeat adventure music, which is fine in Indiana Jones because that's kind of Indiana Jones is almost like a refined B movie in a way. Like, it takes place in the 40s or the 30s, and those movies could get dark, but the adventure tone always felt very it always felt very appropriate. In this, there's a similar kind of music, but it just seems strange to have in like a post-apocalyptic setting. I want to talk a little bit about the soundtrack. I really like this movie's score. There's a lot of nice, I guess you would just say, like, I don't know what you would call that, just natural music with like flutes and drums. It sounds very, I guess you could say tribal. Yeah, island, tribal music. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And it fits the movie really well. But then during a lot of the action scenes, they have this upbeat, classic action music. And it's good. It's like it's a good action theme, but it always felt a little too upbeat for this movie. It's just, I don't know, just post-apocalypse doesn't really scream like upbeat action. And I mean, not that this movie is super dark, but it's like the Road Warrior and the Mad Max movies. Like those are post-apocalyptic action movies, but they're not particularly upbeat.
Yeah,
I mean, those movies have some
moments,
have some orchestrated music like that, but it isn't that upbeat, and it doesn't really perforate. It's not super pervasive throughout those movies. It just feels out of place in this movie. It's kind of strange.
One thing that you also mentioned, and I unfortunately agree with you, but also disagree with you, you were saying that it wasn't shot in an interesting manner. And while I completely agree with you on that, and I would like you to get into detail on why you say that, I have to say I really loved the lighting and the way this was shot because everything was clear and easy to see.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying it's poorly shot. It's just a lot of shots. They use natural lighting. It looks fairly realistic. It might just be that kind of those kind of shots don't really go with that kind of music, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe it just makes the tone, I don't know. It's just, the way it's shot, it's, I don't know. None of the shots stick out to me. When I think of this movie, I think of like the design or kind of the concept. I don't really think of like that shot or that, you know, amazing camera work. It's just kind of, it's just serviceable. It's competent.
When it comes to the production of this film, however, there were a couple interesting things to note. This film was mostly shot in Hawaii, and I want you to talk about some of the issues they had there.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing that was kind of cool is that it was filmed a little bit around Huntington Beach, where the famous film Surf Nazis Must Die was filmed. So take that as you will. Also, Catalina makes a brief appearance in the film.
Yeah, so the movie has infamous... It's one of the things it's infamous for is all the production problems and the development hell that the movie went through. And I don't know all of them, but probably the biggest one, the one that sticks out to me most is the... So this movie has this floating city. It's just... It's exactly that. It's a big floating harbor. And the thing is, they actually built it for the movie. It's... a couple 100 feet in diameter, and it's an actual functioning prop, and it was actually floating out in the ocean off the coast of Hawaii somewhere, fully functional, and they sunk all this money into it, you know, in this huge bloated budget movie. Very impressive, but one problem: when they built it, after it was done, they discovered weather forecasts were showing that there was a hurricane that was going to be sweeping through Hawaii in like a month or 2 months or sometime soon. And the thing is, the city was supposed to take a bigger prominent role in the movie, and so they had to totally change the script and wrap up all the shooting in the city super quick before the hurricane came to destroy it. And so what they ended up doing was they end up just destroying this city in like the first 20 minutes of the movie. The smokers, when the smokers make their debut in the movie, they show up and then they have a big machine gun cannon and they blast the city apart and they just burn it down and just completely destroy it. And I guess they just baked that into the movie.
And they seem to work it out pretty well, which is quite a shame that set got destroyed.
I guess you'd never know, because the movie doesn't really feel incomplete.
No.
It doesn't feel like that city really needed to be in the movie. It was just a location that they go to and then they leave.
Maybe they were going to use it for more world building.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say what their intentions really were. I haven't read the script, or I don't know if like an earlier draft of the script is like out there that has all that.
You know who worked apparently on the script?
Who?
Joss Whedon.
Huh. I guess it's early Joss Whedon stuff in the 90s. Well, oh, what?
Oh, I was trying to get you to lead into the fact that Jack Black is in this film.
Oh, I totally forgot. Yeah. It's funny. Jack Black's actually in the movie. Minor role. He plays a random aircraft pilot in one scene. I guess he's technically
couple scenes.
He's in a couple scenes.
He's in the background of the final thing.
He's up on 5 lines in the movie.
He's up on the railing, crying.
Oh yeah.
So there's that.
It's just funny. There he is, Jack Black, aircraft pilot.
So one thing I do want to mention, just because my family has a small tie to this, with all due respect and with no humor here, at least one of the stunt actors was, for the rest of his life, injured while shooting this film. He was one of the guys doing the stunts on the jet skis. One of those jet ski hits that you see in the film was actually pretty hard, and the guy spent a few years recovering from that, and apparently only recently started being able to move around fully again. Like within the last couple of years. I don't know the man personally, but he was a close friend of my parents. So WaterWorld had a lot of chaos in its manufacturing process. Apparently one of the actors got the bends during the film. I was just kind of looking at top 20 things you wouldn't know about WaterWorld. And frankly, between you and I, we knew most of them. But the two we didn't know, at least I don't think that we knew, was that Joss Whedon was a writer and that one of the actors caught the bends. Oh, and one more thing, but I don't think this is a particularly cool fact. The woman's name throughout the film, she's called JC.
In the movie?
Apparently. I didn't hear her being called that once. Apparently it's short for jellyfish candy.
That's... Huh.
Because she got stung by a jellyfish while making the film. So, there's that. This film was not a financial success, but it was not that much of a financial hardship. It did break even during its filming, as well as it made apparently a ton of money off of syndication being shown on television.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah, and apparently for a while, the home video cassette was the television version. So like there was this big thing for a while about, didn't this happen in the movie? But, then whenever you would go and watch the film, either on television or on video cassette, those scenes would be missing because they were too violent.
There was a truncated version. And that's weird because watching this, like nothing really sticks out as being particularly violent other than the eye socket.
There's the unnecessary mentions of pedophilia. Like those could be easily cut out of the film.
Yeah, it's probably a bunch of little things like that. But I would think that a lot of the stuff that would be cut out would be like just things you can just easily just clip out, not like scenes,
Yeah, no. Well, the way they shot the nudity could probably be cut out without having to cut the whole scene.
Yeah.
But you might have to cut the whole scene. There's the scene where he throws the girl into the water, attempting to murder her. That might not, be good with TV censors.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, scene-wise, what they would have cut out.
That's what I'm saying, is I think that whole scene would probably be cut out. Because he throws the girl in the water and all that. I think that might be cut out.
Yeah.
In the TV version.
I think I vaguely recall reading something about that, there was a bunch of missing footage from the movie for a while until it got a DVD or a Blu-ray release.
But not on this glorious Blu-ray.
Yeah. This definitely seems like the full version.
So, do you have any final notes to say on this film?
God, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I really like. I mean, it's so funny. Like, there's that opening action scene where they're where all the smokers attack the city. I actually like that. It's just so over the top and ridiculous.
Great.
There's just this huge fleet, and the fact that they actually had all these vehicles and this whole city floating out in the water there, like it isn't, compositing or anything. They have the huge machine gun just firing at the city. Just ridiculous, over the top action. And I remember they would always use that plane with the jet ski, or not the jet ski, but the with the water skiing guys.
With the pontoons.
They'd always use that shot when they'd advertise there's like the Universal Studios ride, which is, or not ride, but like that.
Oh, we haven't even talked about the stunt show.
Yeah.
The Universal Studios.
I've never been to it. I just know it's a thing, and I just find that so weird that they were so invested in this movie that Universal Studios put out this WaterWorld event thing that they play at Universal Studios. Yeah, stunt show. And it's still going to this day, and you can still go there, but it's just so funny for this movie, like this, what is really like a flop that like not a whole lot of people remember.
Yeah, you don't spend $200 million to make your money back.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
So one thing I have to say on that, or do you want to finish?
I mean, there are so many little things I want to point out, but I don't know if we really have the time.
We're at 44 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of funny little things. Like, you can kind of tell from the Deacon's design, he has like this eye patch, and towards the end of the movie, he actually puts on like a tricorn, like pirate captain hat. You could kind of tell, like, when they were designing this movie, someone probably just drew a pirate, or they wanted to have a pirate as a bad guy, like a pirate captain. And he doesn't start off looking like that, but then he loses his eye and he has an eye patch, and then he puts on a hat at the end of the movie. It's funny. It's weird.
I didn't put two and two together with the eye patch. That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like there's things in this movie that are like almost clever, and then or there's like little world building things that they could have pushed farther. Like there's the giant mutant shark that just kind of shows up out of nowhere. There isn't really a lot of like mutant sci-fi stuff in this movie. It's just Earth but watery. But then there's one scene where he hunts like a giant shark mutant that's done in 90s CGI. Although to be fair, it held up pretty well for 1995.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the burb?
The what?
The burb.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, at the end of the, I don't know, just funny little thing at the end of the movie. A little seagull lands on the airship that they're on, and I don't know, just thinking about it, it's kind of funny how back then you'd have like real animals that you would film, that you'd have trained animals. I mean, I guess would you have a trained seagull, or would you just?
I don't think you would need it,
or would you just wait for one to land?
You just throw out some food and it'll show up.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how they shot that, but yeah, and just how now. You just have CGI that's good enough that you just CGI an animal in. But it always looks so weird, like The Revenant, if you saw that. Like, they actually went out and shot the movie out in Alaska or Canada, out in the middle of nowhere in freezing temperatures. But then they just have, they did all that, but then they just have CGI animals. They don't look right. There's just weird CGI.
I understand the CGI bear.
Yeah.
That made sense to me.
But why would you CGI the crow?
See, that was the thing, is like, specifically with the Revenant, the fact that the horse wasn't CGI was weird.
Yeah.
It almost looked fake. Because all the animals were CGI.
Yeah. And that's just, of course, going back to WaterWorld, it's interesting that, you just had movies back then where they actually built all this stuff. They use real animals. But, more important to this movie, like they actually built all these ships.
They sank an oil tanker.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know if they actually sank an oil tanker.
I'm assuming the oil tanker was a big model.
I would hope. Maybe.
Although, I wonder if the big set when he's doing his dictator's speech, when the deacon's like speaking to the crowd, I wonder if that was an actual like life-size set, if that was some kind of compositing thing.
So on that subject, apparently the technology that was used to make that set was either used previously or posthumously, to make the Titanic movie. Because Titanic's 1998, right?
Yeah. It came out like 97 or 98, and then this was 95.
Yeah, so later Titanic used this capability to do that.
Yeah. I didn't even think about Titanic, but it kind of makes sense that, Titanic kind of visually looks very similar. It has, it uses a lot of, I guess, similar effects. It's,
you heard it here first, folks. Titanic and WaterWorld are completely interchangeable.
Yeah.
They're both heartwarming love stories.
Yeah, well, it is interesting because they were both huge budget Hollywood movies. They both involved, being on boats. But one was a big flop, and the other was one of the most successful movies of all time.
Second most successful movie of all time still? Or is it third now?
It's up there. I don't know.
It was first until Avatar.
Oh, Avatar. I almost say we should watch that at some point, because that movie is, I haven't seen it since theaters, but that is such a weird... Avatar is weird because, not the movie itself necessarily, but that movie was huge when it came out, right? Like, everyone was talking about it. Does anyone ever talk about Avatar?
No
one ever...
Jenny Nicholson.
Well, here's the thing. No one ever talks about Avatar outside of how much money it earned. No one ever talks about
the fact that they built a theme park.
They built a theme park?
Yeah, there's an Avatar theme park.
It
just opened.
Yeah, God, Avatar. Yeah, it's just weird. Oh, it just opened.
It just opened.
That's bizarre.
Last year. Well, Disney's been working on it for a long while.
Disney?
Yeah.
Disney
has an Avatar.
Disney owns like half the world, so I guess it makes sense. But...
You know what they gave away? Seriously, this is part of the animal kingdom, right? They have Avatar in the animal kingdom in Florida. They had the rights to do a Pokemon theme park. And they chose Avatar over Pokemon.
That's weird. Why?
Because
Pokemon's still like a
animal thing, yeah.
Well, and it's still... Pokemon's still like a a relevant.
Hey, Pokemon is a fad. Avatars forever.
Yeah, Pokemon. Yeah, and that's another weird thing. Like Pokemon's like the only fad that ever like lasted. They're still making games. They just announced a big one.
Yeah.
They just announced a new one, and like people all over Twitter, like it was. I think the trending hashtag for that Pokemon game was like higher up than like all the North Korea and Indian Pakistan war going on. Like,
of course it is. And Detective Pikachu, I'm sure, is doing well.
Well, did that even come out? Or?
No, but it's coming out soon. The
what a weird... Why would you make that?
Detective Pikachu? I don't know.
Why are they creepy CGI?
Oh, I think that they look great.
They look creepy.
They look so good.
I mean, they look realistic, but like, why would you make them look realistic? They just look like terrifying now.
I don't like the human characters in the movie.
Why not just animate it? Americans are like allergic to animation. Americans hate animation. It's so bizarre. In Japan and France, you can make animated films and people will go see them. Here, if you make 2D animated movies, like no one will see them. It's like, get that away. And it's just weird because Disney...
We did in the 90s.
Yeah, well, it's like now, it's got to be live action or it's got to be some like Pixar or CG stuff. But 2D animation, it's like either Americans or studios are just allergic to it. They just don't want to touch it.
So I think this would be a far better topic for another podcast.
Yeah. That's how
this is WaterWorld
is. I don't know. There's a lot of things to talk about. I love the world building. I love the weird vehicle designs. I love the machine gun boat where the back end of the boat is a semi truck. It's just lots of cool, weird Frankenstein vehicles in this movie. But it's no Road Warrior. It's no Fury Road.
God, Fury Road's good.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because actually in a ways it's kind of like it's a little more like Fury Road than like the Road Warrior, just because they're both big budget movies. Like Fury Road was a more high budget movie than the old Mad Max movies were, like guerrilla filmmaking with like no budget. But Fury Road, you care about the characters. I mean, obviously it has all the world building, but the villains in that are threatening. They actually have a terrifying presence on screen. They're the twisted desert cult. In this, the villains are just like dummies. And I don't understand them. Oh, I totally forgot. I almost forgot. I forgot. I asked you this while we were watching it. Did you think anything was weird about the ending when he drops the flare into the tanker ship's fuel and blows everything up? Did you see all like the women and children like on the tanker ship?
Yeah, I did.
He just killed like thousands of people. Like that always weirded me out. Like
our hero.
Yeah, I mean, I get that the smokers are bad guys, but it's like it would be like if the ending of Star Wars, if instead of all just the stormtroopers and the military men, at the controls of the Death Star, if mixed in there were some women with their children.
And we do know that now, thanks to Rogue One, that's a thing.
What?
Yeah, Rogue One. The Death Star is full of women and children.
I didn't see Rogue One.
Oh yeah, no, like that's a thing that the Imperial officers have their families on the Death Star.
That's
at least during
pretty
construction.
Horrifying.
Yeah. That was actually one of the things to sing Rogue One's praises. That's one of the things I do love about Rogue One is that when you're watching this movie, you're like, wait, am I supposed to be rooting for the Empire or am I supposed to be rooting for the Rebels here? Yeah, like that. The only one who do like the people who do the most immoral actions are the rebels.
We should have
but
I don't know. There's enough hate for the new Star Wars movies out there, like Mauler and those guys. Like, I feel like we shouldn't even bother getting into that niche because there's.
I actually want to ask you something.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Do you think WaterWorld was an inspiration for Last Jedi?
WaterWorld, they're both very different.
Really think about it. Really think about this right now. Give yourself a moment. Think. The plot and themes of The Last Jedi.
They're both kind of like a slow chase sort of movie.
Yeah.
Waterworld is shorter. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Waterworld has characters that aren't... I mean, the villains are dumb, but the protagonists aren't dumb, and I don't hate them. They're not great, but
That's a good...
Last Jedi, I was just like, why can't everyone just die? No, only similarities, I would think, other than the slow chase aspect, is the Last Jedi and Waterworld both have villains that I can't take seriously and are kind of stupid. Except that I like Waterworlds more because they have some world building, kind of interesting characteristics, and Dennis Hopper, he says dad jokes, and for a sea dictator who murders people, I think that's pretty cool. It's not like The Last Jedi where you have like a your mama joke at the beginning, and the redhead guy who's just like every one of those guys. It's like they're trying to be like a Hollywood Nazi. It's like that's their character.
Their character is Hollywood Nazi.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
No, I agree with you. It
isn't like the the Empire, the old Star Wars OT movies where they seemed believable. Admiral Piet and General Veer is like all those guys, or Grand Moff Tarkin. Those guys all seem believable, and they're all intimidating, or they all seem like real people who were just part of this vast machine. They weren't Hollywood Nazis.
That's one of the things that I do want to do with this channel is I want to have people on to talk about Star Wars.
I mean, I'll talk about Star Wars.
In another episode, of course.
Yeah.
Though. So let's wrap this up. Do you have any
Bring me on
words?
for Star Wars. I'll talk about Star Wars.
I would love that. So until next time, dear listener, see you out there.